So there was news, Joe, that Admiral Mike Rogers, the former head of the NSA, is voluntarily cooperating with John Durham's investigation. I would think that might cause quite a bit of fervor for some folks like James Comey and others.
This is the biggest single development in the Durham investigation to date. We were told, according to published reports, that Admiral Rogers has met several times with John Durham, and that we now know that Admiral Rogers, who was the central figure in uncovering the illegal electronic spying done by the Obama administration prior to the Carter Page FISA warrants, the spying that went on from 2012 to 2016 involving FBI contractors illegally accessing NSA data. Mr. Rogers discovered that, reported it to the FISA court. All of that spying was stopped by her, and it led to the crescendo of illegal activity by Comey, Clapper, and Brennan. It led to the so-called Crossfire Hurricane investigation to cover up that previous spying that had been going on. Rogers has an electronic trail of all the spying that went on over 5 years. He has personal notes a la James Comey, only this time they are not self-serving notes, they are the truth. Mike Rogers, I have described as the Rosetta Stone of this investigation. This is the single most important development in this. I have been suggesting for a long time that ultimately Rogers would be the key to any criminal investigation. That is coming true. What we now know will happen is I can be fairly comfortable in suggesting that there is going to be a substantial criminal conspiracy indictment involving a lot of people with the electronic spying, by the way, which was done. That electronic spying that went on from 2012 to 2016 into NSA databases was used for unmasking people and then leaking that information to the press. And when the Attorney General talks about investigating private parties, he's talking not only about GPS, Fusion, and Glenn Simpson and all those people, and Nellie Orr. He's talking about the contractors who were illegally accessing NSA databases at the request of Comey and Brennan.
Are we talking about the unmasking that happened with Susan Rice and Lynn, yes, Loretta Lynch, and all of them? Is that the same unmasking?
Yes, and I want everybody to remember in March of 2017 when Devin Nunes went to the White House and he came out and held his famous presser, and he was later criticized for it. Everything he said that day was completely true. What he saw when he went to the NSC at the White House that day were spreadsheets which had been produced for the White House of the intercepts, the illegal NSA access intercepts. And on it were the names of people, telephone numbers, and to and from information, which led to the unmaskings. That's what this is all about. It is truly remarkable that we have finally gotten here.
Yeah, no, it really is. People need to understand how outrageous it was that NSA intercepts, which are supposed to be used to protect us against terrorists, foreign espionage, were apparently being used by the Obama White House to go against political opponents of their party. I mean, that's never, Joe, that's never happened before in our history that I'm aware of.
It never has, and it is a stunning scandal of immense proportions being ignored by the Washington Post and the New York Times. And I want everybody to remember, we've been talking on this show for more than a year about the Judge Collier ruling about illegal spying by the NSA contractors. She wrote an opinion in April of 2018 where she exposed on the public record all of this illegal spying. It went unnoticed. It was completely unreported on. We talked about it on this station, on this show, repeatedly. That opinion, along with a later opinion by Judge Boasberg on very similar matters, have inside of them all of the names of all the people which have been blotted out for purposes of the declassification process. All the people in DOJ and FBI who were involved in this illegal database searching. The 3 FBI contractors, for example, are named in there, but their names are blotted out. She told everybody about this, and nobody did anything about it on Capitol Hill except one person, Devin Nunes. This guy, Nunes and Mike Rogers, should both get the Medal of Freedom from President Trump. They are heroes, American heroes. And Mike Rogers, when he found out about the electronic spying that had been going on for years, and then about the spying on the Trump campaign, he not only went to the FISA court and advised them, he went to Trump, as you will recall, on November the 17th, 2016, and warned him about what was going on. At that very point, Ash Carter, the Secretary of Defense, and James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, tried to get Admiral Rogers fired, and it didn't happen because Obama was smart enough to know that if he fired Rogers, everything would come out immediately.
Well, hopefully it will come out now. Joe, you mentioned Judge Collier. Do you think she so far has been doing enough in, as you know, she's recently issued some orders in reaction to the FISA IG report from DOJ. Do you think she's doing enough in reaction to that IG report, or do you think there are other steps she ought to be taking?
Oh, I absolutely do not think she's doing enough. This is too little, too late. This is a bit of grandstanding and save your ass kind of stuff by a federal judge. There should have been contempt hearings before the FISA court already. She didn't have to wait she knew everything. She knew back in 2018 that there was illegal spying. She knew that she'd been lied to in the Carter Page affidavit. She knew that way back then. She knew that the Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division, John Carlin, had filed false annual certifications of compliance with minimization standards on access to 702 databases about Americans. Let's remember what this scandal is about. This is not about illegal spying on foreign nationals and spies. This is illegal spying on American citizens with no basis whatsoever. We now know that the spying on Carter Page was completely baseless. He had nothing to do with the Russians. He was cooperating with the CIA. He was never charged with the crime. And then there are literally, I want everybody to understand this, as a result of the 702 database, illegal spying by the FBI contractors from 2012 to 2016, where they accessed telephone, email, text message database about Americans, not foreign nationals. Thousands of Americans were spied on. What did Judge Collier do about it? Nothing. Now, I want to see every one of those FISA judges up on Capitol Hill in a hearing. They need to testify about the Carter Page warrant. In the first warrant, when they saw in that footnote that there was a political organization involved in opposition research, that warrant should have been stopped right there.
Joe, hopefully Lindsey Graham is listening to you right now, so he can, because remember, he said he's going to get everybody who signed those in, and we need to get those judges in too.
All right, we've got more with Joe DiGenova coming up. There's a lot to cover here with Joe. We're here with Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, a lot to uncover here, a lot of ground to cover, rather. Just very quickly about impeachment. Can Nancy Pelosi hold those articles of impeachment forever, and then if the president's reelected, she can trot them out, in 2021 or 2022? Doesn't he have the right to a fast and speedy trial?
Well, first of all, it's not a criminal case, so there's no speedy trial applicable. However, Nancy Pelosi's playing a political game. This is a decapitation of a president, a political assassination. It's regicide. This has nothing to do with violating the Constitution on the part of the president. She can hold it up as long as she wants. She's accountable to no one. And all you have to do is watch her news conferences and see how arrogant and pompous she is and how bloviating she is. She can do anything she wants, but so can the Senate. They don't have to entertain these impeachment articles. She's going to offend some conservative Democrats in the Senate if she continues this activity. But the truth is, she can do whatever she wants. And when she's insulated from criticism, when the Washington Post and the New York Times kiss her fanny every day thinking she's saving the country because they hate Trump so much, they are throwing out the Constitution for a political vendetta. President Trump has done absolutely nothing wrong in any of this. And the suggestion that he has is false. All you have to do is watch Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi talk about this, and you know the fraud that is being committed on the American people. But she can do whatever she wants.
Well, actually, Joe, the question I would put to you is, what do you think? Let's assume that she continues to not formally present the articles of impeachment to the clerk of the Senate. I mean, do you think the Senate, Senator McConnell, should they just ignore this, or do you think they should go ahead and act on the articles of impeachment? That's a big topic of discussion right now in Washington.
Yes, whether or not they can do so without ever receiving them, in other words, is
right.
what you're saying. Because, in other words, we would say that as a matter of law, the articles have already been transmitted to the Senate because they have been voted on in the House. And even though managers for the House have not been appointed, can the Senate act on the articles of impeachment? There is no law on this. This is a political question, not a legal question. So the answer is, of course they could. If McConnell wants to do that, which this doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing in his wheelhouse, he's very cautious. He's quietly vicious, but he's also cautious. He's very, very effective. He's a real hero in this scenario. He could do that. His problem is his caucus. Does he have the full support of all the Republicans so that he can, on the floor, move to consider that and have all of the Republicans support him? If he has that, if the Republicans get angry enough, then they can do that. They can consider the articles and throw them out. And there's no recourse to the courts for the House if they do that.
Joe, you managed to land yourself in the opinion page of one of the most vaunted, most respected publications in our country, The Washington Post. The editorial board has mentioned you in connection with Giuliani, Mayor Giuliani, and also Mr. Parnas and Mr. Firtash. You were urged, your names are in here, you and your wife, Victoria Tensing, as being urged to hire, those two men were urged to hire both you and your wife. So congratulations, you're famous.
Here's what they're alleging falsely, which is not new for the Post. They say that we were hired to get dirt on Joe Biden. That's nonsense. Our firm was approached last spring to represent Ukrainian whistleblowers who had information from their investigations about Biden, what Biden was doing in Europe, as well as Hunter. And they were refused visas to come to the United States to talk to U.S. law enforcement officials by our wonderful ambassador, Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. So when that happened, of course, Victoria was supposed to go to Ukraine. She never went. The trip was canceled because the U.S. ambassador refused to allow cooperation by those people. They were threatened. All the Ukrainian whistleblowers were threatened. Months later, we were hired by Dmitry Firtash, a Ukrainian national who was under indictment in Chicago, to represent him in his extradition case. We did that. Rudy Giuliani had nothing to do with that hiring whatsoever. That was done by us on our own. We went to the DOJ. We met with the Attorney General. We've been to Chicago. We've met with them. The matter is still pending. And Mr. Firtash, by the way, is a fierce critic and opponent of Putin. He sometimes disagrees with the United States, which any Ukrainian national would. So the entire editorial is absolutely false. Not surprisingly, the Washington Post got it all wrong. No thanks to them.
Yeah, what a surprise that the Washington Post gets something wrong. And gosh, what a surprise that the former Ukrainian ambassador, who complained in her testimony about the fact that she got fired, refused to allow any information about the self-dealing of the Biden family to be brought to the United States.
Well, let me tell you something. These Ukrainian officials over there have done a marvelous series of interviews on One America News Network with Rudy Giuliani and Ukrainian legal officials, laying out cold for the American people what Ambassador Yovanovitch did to try and destroy any American investigation into the conduct of Hunter Biden. This is not going to go away. No matter how many editorials the Post writes in the New York Times complaining about people trying to represent their clients, which is all Victoria and I were doing in our case, we represent Mr. Firtash. It just so happens that later on, as a result of all this, you find out from Rudy's work that our own United States ambassador was protecting Joe Biden and his son and preventing investigations into Burisma by Ukrainian officials. Here she is whining about no corruption investigations in Ukraine, and when they try to do one, they come across a Democrat. And what does Yovanovitch do? She tries to stop it. She committed perjury on Capitol Hill. She's a liar. She's not the queen bee that they've set her up to be, all delicate and nice and beautiful and fair and honest. She is a liar. She tried to thwart the interests of American citizens, the United States, and more important than that, she tried to thwart the will of honest Ukrainians in order to protect Hunter Biden. She is a disgrace to the Foreign Service, and it is a good thing that President Trump removed her. He didn't need a reason, but he had one. She was corrupt.
Well, Joe, based on this conversation alone, Hans and I eagerly await our subpoenas for Madam Schiff. So thank you. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to you and Victoria. Thank you so much for joining us.
Merry Christmas.